Hello everybody. Thank you very much for joining today's live exam broadcast. I'm just going to check the chat box and pop that up there. Right, fabulous. So, without further ado, we'll be running through the exam paper with you guys and revealing some of the questions. I'm here today with my co-host Lillian.
Hello, guys.
We'll crack on then. As you might have guessed, today we're going to be revealing the exam paper. We're going to go through each exam question, but obviously if you've got any questions at all or any queries, please type them into the chat box and then we'll go through those at the end. If anybody has any burning questions that they want to ask about it once they've seen the questions. So just a little bit of key information for you guys before we kick off going into the actual exam itself. A couple of things that you should know. So first things first, this is a scene examination. So the exam paper, as soon as this video is over, will be posted up onto Moodle alongside this video of the exam reveal. One thing I must absolutely stress is that you cannot take multiple books and multiple papers into the actual examination room itself. You're only allowed to take in one side of A4 paper with prepared notes on there. And bear in mind that isn't both sides of A4 paper, that is one side of A4 paper with prepared notes. So you'll need to be quite concise in what you write down. You'll need to make sure that you revise, that you know the theories and the evidence that you're talking about, and that you know how you're going to use it. So you use that space as cleanly as possible. You will not be able to take in full answers. So I know for some of your other exams, you've actually been able to pre-prepare those answers. I'm afraid that you're not going to be able to do that for this exam. You must make sure that you revise that content, that you remember it, and that you know it through and through. And then that way you'll be able to write your responses to these questions once you're actually in the exam itself. So you are going to need to plan out your answers and make down cues and little notes to yourself that you'll remember. Some things to bear in mind when you're actually planning out your exam answers. So as we go through this paper, I want you to start thinking about how you would begin to plan these questions when you begin to tackle them. So start thinking about what have we covered in the lectures together? What have we covered in the seminars together? Use that as your starting point. So bear in mind that we give you the basis that you need in order to be able to pass this exam, but you should be striving to go further. You should be looking at getting your own sources. You should be looking to impress us if you want to get those higher marks. So what theories should you include is something you need to think about when you're breaking down that question. So look at what kinds of theories do you need, what kind of models do you need, then think about, do you need any case studies or is it multiple case studies? So there are some questions that specifically ask you for a case study, but actually could you potentially use a case study as evidence to support one of the other questions? So think that through. I can't stress this point enough. Make sure that you're actually answering what the question is asking you. So think about, are you explaining? Are you arguing a point? Are you building a case? Are you critiquing or evaluating something? Are you suggesting improvements? Is it something else? So make sure that you look at that question, and when you plan out your answer, you think, yep, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. If you do those things, then obviously we're going to be able to give you those higher marks. The other thing as well, it's not just an opinion-based exam. You need to make sure that you've got those academically credible sources and evidence that supports your thinking and your rationale throughout. So, instructions to candidates. This is what's going to be on the front of your exam. And I want to point out, you can see there's some writing there that's in capital letters to really stress it. Yeah. So we've got, the first one is answer one compulsory question in section A. There's only one question in there, and that's one question that you all have to answer. Then in section B, you need to answer 2 questions. So you'll be given a choice of 4, but you only need to answer 2. So in total, you will be answering 3 questions. So again, only 3 in total for this whole exam. I can't stress enough that when you get to section B, please do not do all 4. We can only give you marks for 2. Yeah. So if you do all 4, you're only going to be damaging your own chances because you won't be completing them as well as you could do. So yeah, only 2 in section B. Okay, so section A. Section A is the one that contains the one compulsory question that you all need to answer. And here it is. So this is the compulsory question. What we're asking you to do is to look at the advertisement that is illustrated there, to take one semiotic model and an explanation of relevant and related communication and marketing theory to explain what you think that the advertisers are trying to convey. So what you need to think about when you look at this is, you know, what is being used in terms of imagery, in terms of color, what kind of copy is being used, what do you infer from that? Is there a certain kind of font and typography? Why have they laid it out in this way? What's the style behind it? So in terms of models portrayed, are there props in there? Are there symbols or icons that mean something? And if so, what does that mean? And then also look at the way that the brand is actually presented as well. You also need to think about how those creative devices are used to convey the communication objectives to the target audience, and why do you think that they have chosen that particular approach in today's market? Then, bearing all that in mind, you need to think about if the advertisement can be further improved. So just breaking that down for you a little bit further, you're going to need to think about one semiotic model, which you can choose. So think about the lectures that we've had. We are going to have some revision lectures as well, where we will go into semiotics again as a refresher. So you'll need to pick one and then begin to apply it. You'll then need to, and a really key element of this question is thinking about what is it that you think the advertisers are trying to convey. So looking at that, who do you think your target audience is? What messages are they actually trying to communicate to that audience? You'll need to identify those and then look at how have they conveyed them. So what's making you think that that's what they want to convey? So how have they actually put those messages across visually within this piece of communication? So yeah, then you'll need to link that to the target audience. So think about who are the target audience, what are their motivations? You might want to potentially do some research around that and some background research, and then think about what their motivations, their challenges, their pain points might be, and why does this advert actually appeal to them? Then finally, based on that and that summary and that appraisal, you then need to think about, are there any improvements that could be made? Is there anything there that based on rationale, based on evidence, you feel would be an improvement, if any, or is it perfect? That's for you to evaluate and then include rationale and evidence for your points. So all of that, it shouldn't be just gut feeling. You need to be providing evidence and theories that back up what it is that you are saying.
Yeah, and we've looked at several of these in our seminars, particularly in term 1.
We've done quite a bit of assessing what messages are. We've done quite a bit of trying to think about what audiences are. So this is stuff that you guys should hopefully be familiar with at this stage in the game. And that is the end of section 1. So that is the one compulsory question. So all of you are going to need to answer that particular question, which brings us then to section B. So in section B, you need to answer any 2 of the following 4 questions. So again, do not answer all 4, only answer 2. So select which ones that you feel like you prefer and that you're going to be able to provide the best answer for. Question 2. So question 2 is actually quite straightforward. What you're being asked to do here is to appraise one of the following marketing communication methods examined in this unit. So bear in mind that you need to pick one from the list that we've been through and over in lectures and seminars. Please do not pick a random one that isn't in the list, because this is what we're going to be able to give you marks for. You then need to provide your appraisal. So you need to include a definition of what that particular marketing communication method is, a summary of those key features. You need to look at what the advantages, so the pros are of that particular method, what the disadvantages are of using it, and then provide a conclusion. So throughout all of that, you should be providing citations to support your thinking. So you need to be looking at things like the textbook, you need to be looking at things like theories and evidence that back up what it is that you're saying. So we have gone over all of these either in lectures or seminars or both. What I must say is that when you are choosing one, check the previous learning materials. So do look through the lectures, do look through the seminars. Remember to go further than what we provide you with. So as I said before, we're giving you the basics. You guys should then be able to, as students reading on this course, should then be able to go out there and find additional information which will really develop your answers and take it up those levels.
And it's important for you to look at lecture capture and watch the lectures on these topics before you go further and dig deeper into the communication method, because we've had some cracking lectures on these topics by some really good experts as well, and some seminar material. We've done some really good exercises.
Yeah, which should all refresh your brain then of what we've been over. Okay, so that's question 2. Question 3. So it starts with a quote, which is by Keller from 2009. And Keller says, the value of a brand to an organization can be seen by recognizing some of the marketplace benefits that are created from having a strong brand. One review of academic research documented a wide range of possible benefits, including increased marketing communication effectiveness. The question is then, do you agree with Keller? So straight away, we're asking you to build an argument, to have a point of view, which is based in rationale and which is based in evidence. You should then discuss how important a brand is to marketing communications. How can or does it impact marketing communications? So reference relevant examples. So you can see here, pulling out some examples, as I talked about before, and theories. Evaluate whether product or brand is the most important to communications. So some things to unpack there. Think back to our lectures and our seminars on branding. So think about some of those things like hierarchy of effects models, think about things like brand personality, proposition, and what kind of impact we discussed that might have on messaging. Think about some of those campaigns that we talked about, and does that actually change the impact overall, if it's the brand or if it's just the product messaging alone. Then have a think about how can you create appeals among certain audiences, potentially using brand or using the product, and can a brand help to shape those consumer attitudes? Will that, if we do impact and shape consumer attitudes, is that going to impact the propensity to purchase? Is that going to make them more likely to buy? So again, throughout all of this, you need to give rationale, build up your argument, think about your narrative and your flow, make sure that it makes sense. You're trying to almost prove your point, and you'll be doing that through a rationale and through supporting evidence to back it up.
Also, while we've been teaching this year, we've included some really good videos showing you examples of branding and the messages and how that's been communicated. So do go back, do go on Moodle, do look at the slides, click on the links, and really do some homework around this question.
Absolutely. And that's why we've done this exam reveal in this format, so we can show you all the questions. We'll put up the exam paper, and you should then be using this seminar time to begin to get to grips with it and make sure that you understand the questions, but also begin to start to plan your answers. So that's question 3. Question 4. Analyze a recent marketing communications campaign of your choosing from a strategic point of view. Apply strategic frameworks and planning models to dissect the campaign design, evaluate its success based on the objectives, and state how it could have been improved. Underpin your thinking with relevant justification. So, key things to unpack from this one. This means a case study. We're saying here a recent marketing communications campaign of your choosing. So what you need to do there is find a case study. So we've used case studies quite a lot in the seminars. I know to varying levels of enjoyment from you guys, but we have used case studies, we have used articles. So you should know the kinds of things that we're beginning to look for when you're looking for a campaign to review and to unpick for this. Do think about, we've talked here about strategic frameworks and planning models. Think what planning framework and what kind of models you want to use to analyze this campaign. So some of the ones that we might have looked at in lectures and seminars, for example, so thinking about things like SOSTAC, thinking about things like DRIP or the Marketing Communications Planning Framework. Look at the lectures that we've gone through when we've been talking about planning campaigns, and decide which ones you want to include to do this. Something to think about here as well is we're talking about evaluating its success. So in order to do that, you need to know what were the objectives, what was the strategy, what did they actually achieve that in the end, because that's going to tell you whether or not it was actually successful overall. You're then being asked to look at, is there anything that could be improved? So what and why? So you need to identify things that, based on your critique using the planning model, that you think, you know what, they could have done this better, or if they'd done it this way, it would have worked better. But you need to include that evidence. It can't just be that you said, yep, I think this would have worked better. It needs to be that it's come from somewhere. Yeah. And then one little tip I would recommend that you do when you're thinking about this is bearing in mind the framework that you choose and the campaign that you choose, because if it has different steps to it, you need to make sure that your steps of your model fit the campaign. So obviously, if it's asking you to evaluate particular steps and you haven't got that information, you're going to struggle to apply that case study to the model, or to that model to the case study. So make sure that when you look for a case study, you make it easy for yourselves and actually have the model that you're going to use in mind. And then you can think, right, okay, this would be quite a good case study to use. There's a lot for me to unpick based on that theory. Yeah. Okay, and again, it needs to be based on evidence, so you should be including that in your citations. So that is question 4. This is the last question. So question 5, read through the Marks and Spencers and Paddington and the Christmas Visitor case study. And this will be popped up on Moodle alongside the exam as a PDF. So if you're looking at the exam and wondering where the case study is, it's on Moodle and is uploaded as a separate link. Critique the partnership activity and evaluate the success of the campaign to the brand overall. And then support your theories using relevant academic literature and theories. So let's take a look at this in a bit more detail. Much like the last question, when you read through the case study, ascertain what are the objectives, look at what you think the strategy was, and that's going to give you clues as to whether or not you feel it was successful. Throughout all of this, you need to make sure that you're supporting your thinking with the theory and the evidence to back it up. When you start looking at this brand partnership and look at that in conjunction with the use of the character, the use of the film, and think about, was it a good fit? Why was it a good fit? Think about some of the branding theory that I mentioned earlier. Look back at those notes from seminars, look back at your notes from lectures, and think about, have we discussed any similar campaigns? Are there any parallels that you can maybe pull from that, and any theories that you might be able to relate to and potentially use? Also, consider when you're unpacking this, you know, we've talked about it numerous times, where is the audience in these campaigns? So think, is there an appeal to the audience? Is it rational? Is it emotional? You know, like we talked about the kind of the Ronseal man versus some of the other adverts. Do you think that that's successful? Does it work? Has it been shown to work? You also need to unpack the components of the campaign. So looking at each of the individual things and how does it come together and what effect does that have? Also, you know, this is marketing comms theory in practice, relating it back to marketing comms theory. So thinking about things like 1-step, 2-step, multi-step models. Are there opinion leaders or formers? Is there any of that that kind of fits in there at all? So quite comprehensive. I'd advise you look through the case study and look back at the question, and again, look at things that we've looked at previously.
Yeah, you may remember that we have looked at something similar just a few weeks ago.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah. So yeah, those of you that have been engaging with it, or you'll know where that content is, and hopefully that will remind you of some of the things that we talked about that might have been helpful. And that, as they say, is all she wrote. So that is the end of section B. So as I say, I've just gone over four questions in section B, but you only need to actually pick 2 questions from section B. So remember that, just 2 questions from section B. So finally, just a few exam pointers to remember. So as I say, a key one, look at the exam paper. Write legibly, write clearly. Obviously, if we can't read it, we're not going to be able to give you the marks. Referencing. So I know some of you already have been asking about referencing for this particular exam. What you need to do is be citing. So you need to reference, if you make a quote or something like that, you need to put the author and the year. So just like you're citing, we won't necessarily, we don't expect you to do a full Harvard reference list at the end. You have only got one side of A4 paper that you can take in with you. You are not going to be able to write down a big list, including the journal issue, the volume, that kind of thing. So we're just looking for proof in terms of the author and the year. And use that against your key models, your theories, or any other kind of evidence that you've pulled out. Big thing, structure is everything. Plan out those answers. So look through those exam questions and begin thinking about how you'd attack it. What information do you need, and what kind of flow would make sense in terms of a story you're trying to tell. Think about all those aspects of the question. So we've gone through those in quite a lot of detail. You go through it in more detail, comb through it, break it down. What do you need to answer and what do you need to answer it? And have a good balance then when you do come to attack it of your theory versus actual practical and appropriate examples. One other thing to bear in mind, the exam is 2 hours. So think about how much time you've got for each question and stick to it. Yeah. So make sure that you've planned that out.
Oh,
were you going to say something?
Yeah. Also, the night before and during the day, because this exam is late on in the afternoon, make sure that you have plenty to drink. Make sure you eat. Make sure you have a good night's sleep the night before so that you're fresh and you're ready to, nail this exam paper.
Yeah.
So look after yourself, basically, to make sure that you are fit and well for it.
Yeah, good advice there. So in terms of the content that we needed to go through today, so we've run through the exam. That's everything. I'm just having a little look at the chat box. There doesn't seem to be any questions at the minute. I'm just going to give you sort of a couple of seconds, well, maybe 15 seconds or so, to see if anybody has any questions that they want to ask. If not, we are going to be running exam sessions for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a couple of revision lectures, and you'll also be doing a couple of exam prep and revision seminars as well. So I'm not seeing anything come through on the chat.
Don't be shy, come on.
As I say, if there isn't anything, you can always ask us during a lecture or in one of the seminars. I don't think we're getting any questions coming through.
We're back to normal next week.
Yeah, back to normal, lectures and seminars as usual. And then what we will also be doing is putting in some appointments on Moodle for you guys for an exam drop-in, which will be happening in April, the beginning of April. But you'll have more information about that as we come up to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's everything then. Other than, I think you wanted to say goodbye, so let me just stop this. Oh. There you go. And that's a goodbye.
Bye.
From Paddington. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Good luck.